said, my name is Jen Febel, and I want to talk to you today about your anger. Because if you're like most of us, you were probably taught that anger is bad or it's not nice. Certainly has no place on any kind of a spiritual journey. Um, and frankly, I kind of call bullshit on that. And so my job today is to change your mind about anger. And like I said, this is typically a 2-day class or a 6-week online class. I'm going to throw as much as I can at you because I think it's important. I think now more so than ever, we are trapped in our homes. We are not able to do what we usually do to distract ourselves from emotions, except for food. That's always available. And so learning ways to understand your emotions, I think, is important always, and especially now. So why are you here? What drew you to this talk today? What is it about this topic at this moment in your life that made you decide to be here? So maybe you just feel like you're missing out, that something's just a little off and you're not sure why. Maybe you're just tired of dealing with the noise in your head and you're hoping for a way to quiet it down a little bit. Or maybe you're just looking for a more holistic way of healing. Whatever brought you here today, I want to say welcome, because I very much believe that it's not by accident. And so thank you guys so much for joining me today. So I want to start by asking you, what is your story? Just think about that for a moment. What is your story? That we all have one of those, right? It's that thing we tell ourselves about ourselves to ourselves, and often to anyone who's listening. So what is your story? What do you tell yourself about yourself to yourself? And what would happen if you knew that you could change it? Now, my story began long time ago, and it was when I was 19 that I received my official diagnosis. Anorexia, bulimia, major depression, generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, suicidal ideation, and self-harm, which means, yes, there are scars on my body that I put there. In other words, broken. Every doctor I saw, every specialist, all agreed I was broken, and I believed them. Because when some very smart people with some very impressive letters after their name tell you that you're broken, how long until you believe them? And that became my story. That became the thing that I told myself about myself to myself. And that's a story that I held on to for a long time. But it brings up the question, who are you? You know, what makes you you? So my name is Jennifer Febel. I am a master hypnotherapist. I am a wife. I am the mother to a very large group of furry critters that I call my fur crew. I am a singer. I am a hula hoop dancer. Fun fact. But surely I'm more than this, right? Surely if you took all of this away, I'd still be me. So who are you? If you are not your story, who are you? Truth is that who we are has less to do with the physical matter that we're made up of and more to do with our thoughts, our memories, our beliefs, our decisions, our attitudes, everything that we have experienced in the past and everything that we have we've inherited from past generations. All of this makes up the starting place of who we are. Your thoughts are who you are. Your story is who you are, and that's something that can change. You are more than that. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So in Japan, there's an art form known as kintsukuroi, which translates literally to mend with gold. See, in our society, when something's not working how we think it's supposed to be working, we assume that it must be broken. And so we decide that we're going to discard it or get rid of it. It's just somehow useless and worthless. And in Japan, they're smart. See, they would see these broken pieces of pottery and they would see them as being more beautiful for having broken. And so they would put it together using molten gold, in essence, highlighting the scars, knowing that each piece was unique for the journey that it had taken. Now, you can't pretend that these bowls are whole anymore. It's clear that something that has gone through something, and it's not whole, it's not broken, so it's unbroken, which means stronger than before. So Live Life Unbroken, that is more than just my business name. That is my mission. It is my mantra. It is, if you can take one thing and one thing only away from this talk, it's that no one is broken. Everyone can heal and become stronger than before. So I'm here in front of you virtually, completely recovered. And you'll notice I say recovered and not in recovery, which in the eating disorder world isn't supposed to happen. We're not supposed to be allowed to ever fully recover. And I've been fully recovered for 9 years now, almost 10, right? And so the goal is not to pretend nothing happened. The goal is to become unbroken, which is stronger than before. So this is Einstein, one of my favorite people, because I'm a nerd. And Einstein said that everything is energy. Just match the frequency of the reality you want and you can't help but get it. There can be no other way. That's not philosophy, that's physics. The fact is, your thoughts are energy. Your story, it has energy. Your thoughts matter. What you say about yourself to yourself actually has an impact. So in 1994, Dr. Masaru Emoto, who's a Japanese researcher and scientist, decided to study the effects of thought and intention on water. So he took samples of water from the Fujiwara Dam in Japan, and he exposed each one to an intention, to a thought. Then he flash froze it and then put it under a super strong microscope, and here's what he found. So when the water was exposed to messages like thank you and like eternal, the water became very structured, very organized, very beautiful, and very symmetrical. Now that same water, when it was exposed to messages like you fool and you disgust me, suddenly the symmetry went away. Suddenly it was very muddled and disorganized. The truth is, your thoughts matter. Your story matters. What you tell yourself about yourself to yourself matters. So what would you look like if we put you under the microscope? This is an example. So Dr. Masaru Emoto also did what's called the rice experiment. You can look it up online. There's videos, all sorts of stuff. You can duplicate it yourself because we all have lots of time right now. And you take 3 jars, fill them with rice. And I think he also did rice and water. And then every day for a month, you say, I love you to the 1 jar. You completely ignore the middle one, and you say, I hate you to the 3rd. And after 30 days, you can see the difference. The rice that was given love still looks good, and it's usually fermenting and has a nice odor, whereas the other ones are in various stages of rot. Your story matters. What you say to yourself, what you tell yourself about yourself to yourself matters. So in order to understand your emotions, in order to understand where this all comes from, it's important to understand a few things about how we operate. So it's important that you realize and know that we have a conscious mind and that we have an unconscious mind. So your conscious mind is everything you're aware of. You might be aware of the sound of my voice, or maybe you're aware of the color purple on my slide. And you might not be aware of the sensation of the back of your legs on the chair where you're sitting, or your feet on the floor. Only now you probably are, right? So where was that information a moment ago? You've been in that position the whole time, the neurons are firing, it's just not in your awareness because it's not important. Okay, so everything you're aware of is your conscious mind, and everything else is your unconscious mind. Now, between these two parts, there's something called the critical faculty. This is something I get into deeper in the longer class, and today all you need to know is that's the part that cares to distinguish between reality and fantasy. And that's not quite intact until we're about 7 years old, which is why kids are little sponges and take everything in uncritically. Now, your conscious mind and your unconscious mind are associated with different hemispheres of the brain, and they have different personalities. Your conscious mind is the part of you that's very logical and linear. It uses language. Its entire purpose is your survival. It's what I call your thinky place. Your unconscious mind is symbolic. If you've ever attempted to analyze your dreams, you know it's highly symbolic. It's emotional. It's where your emotions live, which is why it's important for you to understand how it operates. It thinks in pictures and little sound bites. It's those pictures and conversations that drive you crazy in the middle of the night. And its number one job is to keep you safe, even if it has to take you out of the game to do so. So here's how you experience the world in a nutshell. In my classes, we tend to spend like an hour on this concept alone. So I'm going to give you the really quick and dirty version. So we interact with our environment using our five senses. Everything we see, smell, taste, touch, and feel comes into our senses. Six senses if you want to get metaphysical and include the third eye, but I save that for my healing circles. So five senses. It's estimated that we are exposed to about 20 million bits of information every single second. Now, your conscious mind neurology or thinky place is only capable of processing around 134 bits at a time. So a lot of information doesn't get through, like the sensation of your hair on your head or your clothes on your body, right? This is information that we pick up on and we can tune into, but that we don't often because it's not important. So what determines what gets through? These are what I call your software programs. These are the parts of you that determine who you are. Your memories, your experiences, your values and beliefs. We talked about this earlier. So information comes in and it gets filtered through these neurological filters. And based on what gets through, we have our thoughts. These are those pictures in our head. We have an emotional feeling. And then that creates a physical sensation in our bodies. So let's say that I'm out somewhere and I see a bear. So information comes in through my five senses. I see a bear and it goes through a filter of, oh no, that's a bear, I'm gonna die. Because I think that's a fair filter. Well, now I'm going to be imagining myself being mauled to death by a bear. I'm going to be feeling absolute panic and terror, and my body's going to go into fight or flight. I'm going to release adrenaline. I'm going to release cortisol. My body's going to have specific neurotransmitters firing. Now, let's say I'm out and I see a bear, and it goes through a filter of, wow, what a majestic creature. I should get a photo. Well, now I'm going to be imagining myself getting a picture. I'm going to be feeling kind of excited, and my body's going to respond with different neurotransmitters, different hormones. But here's the thing. It's the same bear. The only thing that has changed is the way the information has been filtered through my neurology. By the way, if you want to look up the process and the biological structures, it's called the reticular activating system, or the RAS, and that is the mechanism by which the filtering happens. So information comes in and gets filtered. This creates our thoughts, our feelings, and our sensations, which then drives us to come up with a strategy, either run away from the bear or take a photo, which will then lead to a behavior such as running or taking a photo. Now, traditionally, when we want to start working on our emotions, on our mental health, we go to someone and they give us strategies. Deep breathing, tapping, counting, all sorts of options that we can do. And the good news is that creates a new behavior, but it sets up a second voice in our head. So now we have one voice saying, it's okay, it's just a bear, it's just a bear, I'm okay. And another voice saying, oh my God, you're gonna die. So I still am having my thoughts, imagining myself being mauled to death. I'm still feeling panic and my body is still releasing chemicals associated with fight or flight. Now, the theory is if you do this strategy over and over again, eventually it will change the biochemistry of your body, which will, of course, have an effect on how you feel, which will then change how your thoughts work. And over time, it will reprogram one of the filters. And it takes a long time. They've done studies that now show that it takes 66 days for you to completely change a habit. 21 days for you to still be conscious of it, but 66 days for it to just be an unconscious process is just a new habit for you, which means for 66 days, you have to tell yourself you're okay, it's just a bear, while simultaneously feeling and seeing all these things. And so it's possible, and it's just really hard. It's like trying to run up an escalator that's going down. And so what I do instead, one of the things, what I specialize in is I like to joke that I'm a software specialist. So your software programs, your memories, your experiences, all that stuff, that's where I work. That's what I do. So your story is just a filter. It's just a software program. It probably had a really big purpose in your life. And now it's just kind of messing things up. Kind of like DOS. You guys remember DOS? Probably aging myself. But if you remember DOS, it's a really good operating system for its time and it's just not working anymore. And if you are running a filter in your life that is creating an emotional state, instead of working only on that part, go deeper, change the filter, and then everything changes. Because I like to say you have 20 million opportunities to experience the world differently. So if you don't like the 134 bits that you've chosen, we can change that. So why is this important? How does it relate to your emotions? In order to understand the connection, it's important to get a little bit more information on how your unconscious mind works. So your unconscious mind does a lot of things for us. Obviously, it runs our autonomic nervous system and makes sure that our heart is beating and that we're breathing without having to think about it. It keeps all our body systems functioning. In terms of your emotions, it's important to know that your unconscious mind will store and organize your memories. It represses a memory with an unresolved negative emotion. So let's say you're going along in life and something big happens, something emotional happens, a global pandemic happens. And in the moment, there's so much stuff going on that you really don't have time to deal with all the feels of it, all the emotions associated with it. And so we have a mechanism whereby your unconscious mind will take those emotions from you and hide it out of your conscious awareness so that you can get through what you need to get through. Because if you're stuck in fear or you're stuck in anger, you can't get where you need to go. And so it'll hide that emotion from you. And these emotions are important. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And so you're meant to go back and do something with those emotions, but of course we never do. So what happens is your unconscious mind takes this from you, hides it from your awareness, and it says, you know what, let's make sure we come back, and it puts in a pin so you can remember to find it again. Again, we never go back to it. And so life goes along and things happen. Jobs are lost, people pass away, people move away, all sorts of things change. We have lots of emotion, and over time we end up with lots of little pins. Now, your unconscious mind also has another mechanism where it will present these memories into your awareness to release the negative emotion. So how this works is you're going along in life and something happens and it's a little thing, but you end up having this big response to it because your unconscious mind sees it and it's like, well, this is very similar to all these other pins. Maybe this time they're going to get the information that they need. Let's clear it all at once. It's very efficient. So let's throw all this up to the surface so that it can get resolved all at once, kind of like a 2-for-1. So something small happens in the now and you have this huge emotional response, and we call that a trigger. And a trigger means you're functioning exactly as you are supposed to. I'm going to say that again. If you have triggers, it means your unconscious mind is functioning exactly as it should. All right, so a gestalt is an organizing system. If I said to you, name 3 things that are blue, you can do that because somehow it's tagged as blue. Name 3 things that make you upset. Easy to find because it's tagged as upset. So these little groupings of blue or upset is what we in psychology call a gestalt. So this line is, let's say it's an anger gestalt. So things happen, things go along, and you don't really pay attention. We don't know all the times we were angry, all the times we were sad. But there are a few that stick out, and this is what we call a C, a significant emotional event. And these are the pins. These are the ones we're meant to come back to. These are the ones where there's still something active. If I can think about an event in my past and I still have a big emotional response now, it means there's a pin there. I should be able to remember that something happened, but if my blood literally still boils over something or I can still cry, that's your sign that there's a pin. That's your sign that there's something that you haven't resolved yet. And it's important to resolve it because, as you'll see in a moment, your emotions are messengers. So, what's the point? I mean, really, besides messing up interpersonal relationships and making things feel icky sometimes, why do we even have emotions in the first place? They must have some sort of evolutionary importance. Otherwise, they would have been phased out over all these years. And yet, as we've evolved as humans on this planet, our emotions have become stronger. So there's got to be something to them. So why do we have them? What is the point of your emotions? The truth is, your emotions are the language of your unconscious mind. So your unconscious mind is associated with the older, more reptilian parts of the brain, kind of more the brainstem area. And it didn't have language. It's your instinctual self. And then as we evolved, we ended up with this higher thinking part, our conscious mind, and it has words and language. So how do these two parts of us keep in touch? If your unconscious mind picks up a threat in the environment, how does it bring it into your awareness in a way that you will recognize? Well, it somehow creates a movement of energy. I'm not going to get into the biology of that, but let's just say sodium and potassium channels. So your nervous system, you pick up on it somehow. And then you notice this movement of energy in your body. Now, energy in motion is emotion. So your emotions are just the sensation of energy moving, and your emotions are just the language of your unconscious mind. It's talking to you. So Emotions are meant to convey very important information about your internal state, and it's meant to prompt action. And that's a key thing because most of us feel our emotions, and instead of doing something that they are prompting us to do, we do something to make the emotion go away. And so we spend all our time trying to make the emotion go away instead of listening to it, instead of doing something as a result of our emotion, instead of trying to make the emotion go away. So they are meant to be strong motivators. Now, this is how we like to think of our emotions. I have good emotions like love and excitement and joy, yay. And I have bad emotions like anxiety, sadness, and anger, boo. If your emotions are a communication system that allows your instinctual self to communicate with your higher thinking self, then the truth is all emotions are amazing. They're all just data, it's all messengers. So there are no good and bad emotions. There are, however, ones that feel icky. All emotions are good. Some just don't feel as good as others because all of them are your unconscious mind talking to you. So in Gestalt psychology, in addition to having the Gestalts as an organizational system for pins, the Gestalts are also arranged in a hierarchy. And it goes like this. So the first emotion at the top is anger, then sadness, then fear, then hurt, then guilt. So let's say you're going on in life and everything's going along and some big stuff happens and you end up with a lot of pins on your anger Gestalt because I'm not allowed to be angry. I have to be nice all the time. And it's not a good thing to be angry. And I should just push that down because who wants to be angry? And so I ignore my anger. And as the pins start to accumulate, it gets heavy and it collapses down into sadness. And we call that depression. Depression is 100% of the time repressed anger. Now, let's say we're not allowed to acknowledge our sadness either because no one likes a Debbie Downer and you should just smile and radiate love and positivity. And so I ignore my sadness too. Eventually, it's that gestalt's going to get heavy with pins. It's going to collapse down into fear, and we call that anxiety. You show me someone who suffers from anxiety and depression. I show you someone who has terrible boundaries and is enraged all the time and doesn't know what to do about it. Now, if you're really lucky, all of your gestalts are completely fused, and the only emotion you really let yourself feel is guilt. And that's horrible. And if you're super lucky, you drop all the way down underneath the guilt into shame. So as each of these gestalts collapse, the emotion that it shows is the one that you feel all the time, no matter what happens around you. You berate yourself for it. You feel terrible about it. You make it your responsibility. So here's a quick cheat sheet of what each emotion is telling you. So if they're just messengers, if they're just a communication system between your instinctual self and your higher thinking self, then what the heck do they mean? So sadness tends to make us slow down and withdraw, and it's telling you there's been a loss. Your sadness is telling you that you need healing. How many of us have given ourselves the gift of healing when we're sad, and how many of us instead berate ourselves for, I shouldn't feel sad, or just ask, why am I sad? Instead of listening and giving ourselves healing. Fear makes you get away and avoid something. It's telling you that there's a threat, and it's telling you that you need safety. Now, anger tends to make us attack or assert, so fight or flight. Your anger tells you when you're being taken advantage of, when something's not fair, when you're giving too much and you're not receiving enough. So your anger is the emotion that lets you know about your boundaries. Now, your boundaries are where you are and where you are not. What is in your realm of control and what is outside of your realm of control, which means your boundaries are directly tied to your sense of self and your space and place in the universe. And since anger is the emotion that our unconscious mind uses to let us know when there's something going on with our boundaries, your anger is directly tied to your sense of self and to your space and place in the universe. And what's the very first emotion that we're taught to turn off because it's not nice? And then we wonder why we can't understand what's going on in our life. And then we wonder why we feel sad or anxious all the time. Your anger is the most important emotion that you have. So here's what anger teaches you. When someone's taking advantage, so when you feel like you're giving too much, or on the flip side, you're not receiving enough. So many of us are terrible at receiving. Someone says, "Oh, you look gorgeous today," and we deflect it. "Oh, no, it's just this or it's just that." We're not very good at receiving, and that's also part of boundaries. We tend to think boundaries are all about telling people no. Boundaries are actually about asking for what you need, which of course presupposes that we have to know what we need. And most of us have no idea because we spend so much time running from our unconscious mind instead of listening to it. So your anger tells you when something's not fair, and it indicates that you need some sort of a boundary. Now, normally when I do this talk, I now go into boundaries. What are they? I teach what's called the magic formula for setting boundaries, the magic sentence for toxic people. I go through all sorts of stuff. This is just a little talk of that. And if you were interested in learning more about the class, I'm going to put up some information in a moment. And of course, any questions you have, I am happy to answer. So like I said, if you wanted to learn more about the class, if you wanted more information, I go as deep as I can in this class. I do have a special deal out. I'm going to post it in the group if Greg's okay with it. If not, just go to my website. And I want to make sure that everyone's getting this information because, like I said, now more than ever, I think we need to know how to deal with our anger. If anger is about boundaries and you're stuck in the house with your family, I promise you, you've got anger. I also just wanted to let you guys know really quickly that every Thursday I run a free healing circle via Zoom. That's where I break out more of my woo-y stuff. We do a guided meditation. We do a candle meditation. I talk about different energetic things. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. Like I said, it's free. It's a drop-in thing. You just need the Zoom link. And then if you have any questions about me, that's my email address. So I'm going to leave you with one final thought. I end all my talks with this. Decide you want it more than you're afraid of it. Getting to know yourself, getting to know your emotions might feel a little bit uncomfortable and probably a little scary. And that's okay. It's okay to be afraid of it. Just decide that you want it more than you're afraid of it, because that's the decision that starts everything. So thank you guys again for everything. Thank you, Greg, for allowing me the opportunity to help teach people about their emotions. And of course, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm on social media, by email.